And so people knew. I mean, the funny part, I think, is that people have known this for thousands of years. Because if you go back and look at all major religions, they all have periods of fasting.
Ah,
All of them.
bingo.
Prolonged periods of fasting, 40 days and 40 nights, right? It's like crazy that
Doc,
they
look
knew
at, look at the cultures that live the longest. You know,
that.
the tons of people and all these people, they say it's not even what they're eating to why they're living so long disease-free. It's the fact that they're not eating for so many times of the year. Whether they run out of food, whether the seasons change. I mean, in the Hunza period, they call it starvation spring. It's like those fasting moments in the time people were eating, it was completely different then. They didn't have access to food all day. Food was precious. They would go out hunting all day. And, they wouldn't eat but maybe one and, 2 meals a day. That's basically what we're emulating when we're intermittent fasting. We're emulating what cultures did, for thousands and thousands of years and lived long doing it. So when we hear these studies of, eating less calories and living longer, it really, Doc, should be eating less often in living. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely, because nobody in history has decided to calorie restrict by eating small, frequent meals, right? The much easier thing to do is to cut out a bunch of meals. Like, why would you want to cook and clean and prep 6 times a day when you could do it once a day? Right? Isn't it make a lot more sense, right, from a logistical standpoint? And the other thing that's crazy, and I see this all the time because we do a lot of fasting in our clinic as well, is that people come back and they say, I didn't think I thought it'd be terrible, but it's actually really, really easy. And it's like, well, because once you get into that mode of not eating, there's no inertia there. The inertia is not to do it. It's kind of like my son, right? You can't get him into the bath, but when he's in the bath, you can't get them out of the bath, right?
I like that.
Same thing. When you start eating, it's just really hard to stop, right? So if you start by not eating, you might as well just ride that until it's time, right? And it's a lot easier.
I look, the last 2 days, I always pick one day a week where I fast for 24 hours. I go dinner to dinner, right? The other days I'm typically doing between 18 and 20 hours, but the day before yesterday, I was so busy, I went on and on my day, but I realized it had been 24 hours. I didn't eat. I didn't eat all day. Yesterday, the same thing. I went 2 days where I didn't eat for 24 hours. The day before and yesterday, I went 24 hours, and I wasn't hungry. I never thought about food. I had pure energy. My brain worked good. Oftentimes, when you eat, the blood rushes to your stomach, your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, and you get that sluggish down. It's like when I'm my busiest and I need my brain the most, I simply don't eat. Now, matter of fact, how many hours do you go? What's your intermittent fasting schedule?
I typically go 24 hours a couple times a week, although it really depends. It depends on how busy I am. When I get really busy, I really just do it a lot more because it saves me 45 minutes at lunchtime, right?
It's massive amount of time you have when you're not eating. My son didn't eat yesterday. He was like, Dad, he's like, I didn't realize how much eating bogs me down. I'm like, yeah, exactly, son.
Well, not just that, but people worry about not having energy and there's a whole thing that I won't be able to concentrate, right? And it is really funny that people think that because it's pretty obvious that if you don't eat, your brain actually works better, right? Because if you think about it, you had a giant Thanksgiving dinner, right? Are you really super sharp, or are you sluggish on the couch watching television, right? Well, it's pretty clear that eating a lot doesn't really make you mentally very sharp, right? On the other hand, when you say that somebody is really hungry for something, right? They're hungry for power, hungry for this, hungry for that promotion. Does it mean they're sluggish and have no energy? No. When you're hungry for something, it means you have a lot of energy and you're willing to do what it takes, right? And that's what the body does. It actually fuels you, and they've done so many studies on this fasting. It's actually, it's been well established for 50 years. Your noradrenaline levels go up, your growth hormone levels go up, and your metabolism doesn't go down. So you're actually more energetic. So at the beginning of and everybody worries about this metabolic slowdown that you see with the chronic, calorie reduction. You don't see that with the fasting because you can fast for 4 days. And the resting metabolic rate at the end of the 4 days is actually 15, 14% higher than it was at the beginning. So your metabolism is actually revving up. But what you've done is you've switched energy sources from food to fat, right? And that's all it's done. That's all it's done.
Yeah, I mean, so it is the opposite. So most days then, I mean, you're eating 1 to 2 meals a day, and you're going, how long do you go in between? So you go.
I mean, I rarely eat breakfast. Like I eat breakfast on the weekends now, but
one day a week, I call it my feast, where I actually purposely eat more. Again, emulating our ancestors. So I purposely on Saturdays eat breakfast, lunch and dinner. I try to eat more. By the way, it's hard for me.
Actually, I find the same. I mean, on the weekends, I find that I'm not actually hungry, but I do eat because my family is there, and I usually eat breakfast. There are social things that go along with it, right? But because it's nice, right? And this is what I say about fasting is you really have to find what fits into your life, because what fits into my life may not fit into somebody else's life. So on Saturdays and Sundays, right, it's a little less busy, so it's nice to enjoy that time in the morning and have a little bit of something with the kids and stuff, right, with my wife and the kids, and I like that. So I have something. I find that oftentimes I'm not hungry, but once I start, I can eat a full breakfast, right? And that's what I mean. That sometimes it's just easier to go right through. Absolutely. So I do, but Monday to Friday I almost never eat breakfast anymore. So then it's really easy, because then when you skip lunch, you've gone kind of 24 hours. So some weeks I wind up doing it like 4 out of the 5 days, and again, it's mostly because it depends on my work schedule, right? So when I get really busy, then I know that those are days that I'm going to, it's not worth it for me, right? The body gets so used to it, it gets so easy to skip that meal that it's far more precious to me to get that 45 minutes or an hour and get home a little earlier. It's far more precious to me than eating something, right? It just doesn't matter that much, whereas that 45 minutes is hard to get back, right? And that's every day, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's like 3-4 hours of extra time that I have to do stuff. So on days that it's not that busy, then I'll eat more, right? But it depends a lot on social.
I think we're emulating feast and famine, and I think there's benefit to both. I believe the feast reminds our bodies that we have plenty and to burn fat. I think it makes us more of a fat burning machine. When the body says, hey, we're not starving here, it'll burn its fat with ease. The body, I believe, can create some blunting of the insulin receptor if it thinks it's starving, and that's not a good thing, because it'll want to hold on. But I believe that 1 day or 2 of feasting is a really good thing in the fast. Here's what I would ask, though. I would ask that, what do you say to the people who go, I just can't go without food, right? I get dizzy, because these are we all, right, Meredith? We hear that all the time. Well, I get dizzy, but you and I know that eventually the body shifts. I call it the desert island experience. If I put you on a desert island, you'd have those days, but eventually you could go with 1 meal a day or no food, and you would be just fine. So what do you say to that? I mean,
Yeah. Well, we warn people ahead of time that the first few times that they do this, it's going to feel really bad.
Absolutely.
And it's the same for ketosis, right? People talk about a keto flu and all this sort of stuff. And as you make that kind of shift in your metabolism, one, it takes a bit of time, but during that time, you have to understand that it's not abnormal, and that's what. Because if they do it twice, and the first one was kind of bad, and the second one was kind of bad, then like they're really hungry, they'd say, "Oh, I can't do this." Like they give up. But it's like, look, you got to give your body a chance, right? If you want to learn to play the piano, you don't give up after 2 times, right? It's like, oh, I tried to play the piano twice, and I can't play this Beethoven piece. Well, that's kind of ridiculous, right? It's the same thing. You have to let your body get used to it. So we warn them ahead of time, even before they start it. And sometimes, most people do fine once they get started. Then they have to find their niche, because it's funny because some people feel like, great with the 24, 36 hours, and some people find that they do way better with like long fasts, like periodic 5 days, 7 day
Agree.
fasts,
I
right?
agree with that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I say it doesn't matter to me. If you like this, then do it. If you like the other, do it, as long as you're getting your results. When people really have trouble, I actually have them sometimes, what I ask them to do, and not all of them do it obviously, but I say what you should do is go for a long period, like 5 or 7 days,
I
because
agree.
that's going to force your body. It's kind of like the desert island, right? You're forcing your body to actually do it, right? And
Absolutely.
it takes a bit of motivation, and it takes a bit of people who are are willing to do it. But when they do that, their bodies usually make that adjustment, because then they know, you kind of force your body to say, look, it's not coming, okay? There's no food coming. You better start shifting your metabolism. And then when it does, they find it much easier, right? And also, if they're kind of in that kind of low carb, people who are eating a lot of low carb or ketotic diets, they actually do much better, right? They find the fasting like really easy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a natural kind of segue when they're already kind of in that high fat kind of diet. They actually do they switch over very well. So sometimes the other thing is to switch them to that diet first.